the post-Gaza environment on campus, we definitely saw a marked change. And even if you compare this to the Second Lebanon War, which was on CNN, which everybody sort of glued to the sets, that all happened in August. When we got back on campus in September and October, and we had prepared a major campaign to deal with a lot of those challenges, people were like, the students were, what war? So as much as we were concerned about that, it actually didn't manifest itself in that way. The Gaza situation is different. First of all, it started in Europe. There were something like a dozen sit-ins on English British university campuses in the month of January. And there was already, by the time we got back, by the end of January, early February, we were seeing not only divestment petitions and efforts and demands around the country, but we were beginning to see some, frankly, some hostile activity that manifests itself in California and Canada at York University, and even here in New York at NYU, where a group of students barricaded themselves in the Kimmel Center. And very much to the credit of the NYU president and administration, when illegal acts take place, the university needs to have a strong hand and deal with it. And that's exactly how the NYU president did it, and I believe handled it extremely effectively and appropriately. But even with all of that, the number one challenge that we have faced, and that has seen some additional, signs of life and activism, comes from the faculty side. So when at UCLA, for example, a group of professors did a protest on behalf of a new boycott activity that they were announcing after the Gaza invasion. And so you can imagine, and where did they choose to do the protest? At a Batsheva dance company performance on the campus. And so I had people, and this is on the front page of the UCLA Bruin student newspaper. So even if the students weren't there, they saw their professors on the front page of the student newspaper protesting Israel's invasion. So we definitely saw line crossing in lots of different academic forums. Sometimes you see it in terms of extremely unbalanced panels taking place. And it's at lots of different universities, not just faraway ones, prestigious universities. That's problematic, and that is also symptomatic of the power and, frankly, almost unchallengeable position of the Middle East Study Association on campus, which has centers on about 110 different universities around the United States. And these have been centers that have been funded by hostile either governments or individuals, dating back to the early 70s in Edward Said's book on Orientalism, which essentially is the Bible of anti-Israelism that is a common fare in the curriculum of not only people in Middle East studies, but frankly in some schools, in almost any graduate education programs that we've seen over the years. So the hostility in academia and certain circles toward Israel is one that is real. In-class sort of harassment, we have seen very little by way of those kind of complaints since the incidents at Columbia a few years ago. We actually think that brought a lot of not only media attention, but academic attention to that set of abuses. So I can't say unequivocally that that's over, but we have not seen the same level of concern or at least expressions of complaints from students in that category. Overall, Jewish students are very comfortable on most college campuses, but the periodic, and over this semester, the increased level and intensity of guerrilla theater and sort of more confrontational sit-in tactics and things like that are, at times sort of viewed as a little bit freaky. And by the way, not only for the Jewish students, but I think for a lot of the mainstream students on campus. And as a result, I think a lot of students are inclined to just sort of marginalize that or move away from that, viewing it as something that they don't want to associate themselves with. That's what we saw for a few years with the early cast of Israel detractors that were involved with the divestment movement on campus. But on the other hand, it is important to sort of, as you say, keep your finger on the pulse of student life. This is a period where, following the national election, there's a great deal of interest and empowerment of this generation about being involved in social and political activities. And we'd like to think, even in a time of an economic downturn, that can somehow be turned into a force for good. We've seen the early signs of this with involvement in service activities in Israel, service activities in the Gulf, service activities in a number of urban centers around the country. We've been piloting this year an urban service program with a city year, in looking at how we actually involve students in service projects closer to their own backyards. And we're seeing really a remarkable response from the students, and we hope to be able to tap into that, not merely say, we need you as counter-protesters, but to say to them, we need you to be helping us celebrate Israel's Yom Ha'atzmaut ceremony, not merely negating Israel Apartheid Week. We can generate much more in terms of interest, enthusiasm, again, not only among the Jewish students, but among the broader campus sentiment.